Good winter morning. Welcome to another edition of African Americans Ain't Africans, the Think Show that proves without a shadow of a doubt that the so-called African American didn't find their way to America in the trunk of a ship. I'm your host, the Indigenous One. Everybody sees the climate that we're in now. Today, we have a young lady that's going to explain how we can cope with the changes that are coming right now. The writing is on the wall. How individual families and Black businesses can prepare for the shift that is upon us. And I know you guys been watching the news and you've been paying attention to what's going on. So this young lady is going to explain some of the things that we can do so we won't fall victim to what's planned for us. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Kenyatta Rose. Good morning, Kenyatta.
Good morning, Carrie. Well, first off, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Um, I just want to say I first came across your work recently, and it has really blown away a lot of the paradigms that I had grown up in school. And so I just want to thank you for that, for the work that you're doing. A little bit about myself. I started out in accounting recently, business consultant for CPA firms, and I follow business a lot. I like to think quote. I'm not going to give the name of the person who said this, but it has been a north star for me, and it's to study various subjects so that we can have multiple mental models or multiple ways through which to see the world. And so I consider myself not a scholar by training, but a scholar by birthright. And so I follow a lot what's going on with business, global. And I have to say, I want to rephrase what you said. I wouldn't frame it as coping, but I would better say, how do we position ourselves for what's upon us? And the reason why I bring that up is in 2006, I had just graduated from undergrad. And 2007, literally, when we experienced that crash, I was working for a Bank of New York Mellon, and I was working in their asset department. And although I wasn't quite skilled in what I was doing, I was working on like their bond side, but I knew that it was coming. I knew. I didn't know how to position myself. I didn't know how to take advantage of it because, again, I'm green. I'm first generation college graduate. So learning a lot on my own. I knew it was coming though. I just knew. And then next thing you know, bam, we saw the collapse. Why that is so important for me is because Bear Stearns is one of the companies that was wiped out during that time. Here's what's interesting. 2006, I was walking on campus, and Bear Stearns was there recruiting at my campus. At the time, the university that I attended was named one of the top universities in the country. Bear Stearns is one of the main recruiters there, and I had put my name in a hat to be hired by them and didn't get the job. A year later, they're gone. Bear Stearns, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar company, global asset management company, obliterated overnight, unheard of. And so when I think about that, I often, for me, that is a very recent experience. For many people, say, "Oh, that happened well over a decade, and get over it." No, 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 no. Because one of the things that I wish I had been done is I wish I had been better positioned to purchase properties during then. Purchase some stocks that were falling that are now large. I mean, some of your large blue cap stocks. And so I feel it's my job right now to. I see the writing is on the wall. We're about to be. We're not about to, but we're in yet another watershed moment. And so I just wanted to come on here and talk to people, talk to my family about how we can position ourselves for that. So one of the things I really want to discuss is we're in the Gregorian New Year. And what do people do in the new year? They write down and they focus on their individual goals. And I'm saying we can no longer afford to do that. We can no longer afford to have goals about what I want to accomplish, what I want to do in my life. Going into this new season, everybody keeps talking about we're in the age of Aquarius, we're in the age of karma, we're in the age of retribution, all of this going on, and you can feel it. So with that being said, we can no longer do the individual. We've got to have a collective vision. We've got to now start having collective goals. So what do I mean by that? Recently, my family inherited uh, land, and without giving too many details, because it's a very sensitive situation, our family now is not thinking about how, okay, there's one individual that wants to get the property and they just want to live in a house. No, we're thinking about how do we pool our resources together to benefit the next 1 or 2 or 3 generations. That's how we've got to start moving. And we haven't moved like that in a long time. Black people, Black Americans, Indigenous Black Americans, we haven't had that unison in quite a long time. And you probably could speak better to how long it's been. I'm 39. So by the time I got to the planet, it was like, I got like probably the last bit of it. Families are now going to have to start, we used to do susus. Maybe think about some of the ways, and I have some ideas here, putting together a susu to purchase land together. I don't think it's enough to I wouldn't encourage anybody to go out there and buy property right now, but I want us to start thinking more about land. And I don't know what we do with the land. I'm reading books on hemp production, hemp farming, and thinking about that myself. So I can't give any advice on that. But what I do know for what's about to come, it's things are going to get better for us, but there's going to be a rocky period. And we're not going to be able to do it alone. We're going to have to come together, whether it's, if you're a single woman, maybe you team up with your baby daddies, you know, brothers and sisters, siblings linking up together. All I know is what is coming. We're not going to be able to do it individually. We're going to have to start coming into this new year and forward, creating collective goals, having a collective vision for our families. And I don't know if just as I'm saying that, what is happening for you?
Well, I'm doing what you're saying. It's a family effort.
Yeah.
Me and my sister, we're working on some things. But when you say what's coming, what are you talking about? What are you
So
trying to
what do
get?
I mean? So I'm of the mind. So I recently, and I'm not. I just want to say that I'm not a certified financial advisor, right, or CPA right now. I will be a CPA eventually. So I can't. I'm not giving out any financial advice. What I believe is that they're driving up the stock market to get their last ditch moments or last ditch efforts to get as much money as possible. And who by they, I mean the deletes, billionaires. I follow a lot of the finance news and a lot of it on Yahoo Finance, Wall Street Journal, and New York Times. A lot of it is conflicting. What do I mean by that? I'm signed up to Wall Street Journal. Literally, I lie to you not, Carrie. Literally within a span of 5 minutes, they published an article, and I don't remember what the details were. Well, all I remember is that 5 minutes later, there was a conflicting article that was published 5 minutes apart on Wall Street Journal. Literally, it was something pertaining to bonds. And I don't remember exactly, and I wish I had saved it. But when I saw that, I said, okay, they are playing games. I don't know the details of the game that they're playing, but I'm of the mind. And when I saw that, I personally, liquidated some of my portfolio when I saw that. So I didn't liquidate all of it, but I liquidated industries that I just see some problem areas personally. And again, I'm not a financial advisor, so I won't go into that. I know a lot of people's, you have people that give that advice, and that's good for them. But I'm doing it the professional way, so I'm not going to speak on any particulars. But what I will say is, I would encourage people to start following financial news. You want to download Yahoo Finance, CNBC. Wall Street Journal, if you're willing to invest the $31 a month, I would recommend doing that. I'm not saying that all of the information that you're getting is accurate. I'm not even sure if it's true, but it's good to still be in the know so that you can connect your own dots. So I want to encourage people to do that, to start following what's happening on our market and the global markets as well. That's the best way. I think there's something imminent coming. I don't think it's going to be good. I think also the second thing is they're not talking about it, but BRICS just So BRICS nations just they just created, I think it was $2 billion in bonds, BRIC bonds, and they're not taking payment in US dollars. That
Can
news
you
came out.
gi-
Mhm.
can you give us an example of how bonds work for those who don't know, like me?
Okay, so you have bonds and yields. When the price goes up, the yield goes down. So pretty much you buy a bond, it's a debt asset. So you're loaning a company or you're loaning a municipality. Um, let's say 1,000 may have $1,000 bond. So you're loaning them money in order to receive interest payments. And then at some point the bond matures. So let's say if you buy a 1-year bond, so you will receive interest payments for a year, and then at the year the bond will mature. So a bond is a debt instrument. So you have debt instruments and then you have equity. Stocks are equity and bond is debt. So when they say how a company is leveraged, you're talking about how much debt they have in comparison to how much equity. So there's two ways that companies raise money, right? Companies will raise money two different ways. The primary two different ways. Public companies. So they will issue bonds, which are they receive a rating from Moody's and I forget the other company, Fitch, Fitch and something else. So companies will raise money by selling you bonds, selling us bonds, and then they will raise money by selling their stock on the public market. When they do that, it's called an initial public offering. So what they're doing is companies are coming to the public, people like you and I, and they're saying, "Hey, buy our stock," right? That's the very lamest way of putting it. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated than that. But that, if I were explaining it to a 5-year-old, or when I'm explaining these things to my daughter, that's pretty much how I keep it very layman. So it's they're creating an equity instrument and they're selling it on the public market. And when you buy a stock, you're essentially putting money into the company. And at that point, you become a shareholder. If you're buying debt, you become a debt holder. And these are the two ways that public companies are raising money.
Why would somebody buy debt?
You're buying debt because that's a really good question. You're buying debt because you believe that the company will pretty much honor your debt by paying you. So there's a cost of money, right? Money always has a cost, right? There's a cost of money. When you borrow something, there's a cost. When you buy something, there's a cost. On the issuing side, the cost of raising money is interest. On the buyer side, you could have money just sitting around doing nothing, right? Let's say I have $5,000 in my closet. That money's not doing anything. It's just sitting there. If I put that money to work, I can use that money to make me more money as opposed to just letting the money just sit there and do nothing. So we never want money just sitting around doing nothing. You should have money set aside for emergencies. You should have money set aside for just like, they need to get up and go somewhere. But ideally, you want money going out there to, as I say, two ways, how I explain it to my daughter. You want to deploy capital, or you want your money to go out there and recruit other little monies. So when a person buys debt, they're thinking about, okay, one, this company is trustworthy, or this municipality is trustworthy. And I'm going to use this as one stream of income or one stream of revenue to make money. So I'm going to probably, my portfolio will only be 5% debt. So you're buying debt because you believe that the company is trustworthy and you want to use that as one strategy to make money. It wouldn't be your overall strategy, but it would just be one. So you're using that to make more money. Does that make sense?
No, not to me. I
Not
still
to
don't
you.
get it.
So you so
So
think
so
about
this
it
is
this
what I
way,
think.
right? Think about diversification, right? Diversification. Diversification means you have multiple different streams of revenue or multiple different streams of income. One of them is working at your job. One of them could be buying bonds. One of them could be buying equity. One of them could be royalty from creating something. One of them could be receiving payments because you invested in a company. So buying debt is just one way to make money. Is it the best way? That's up for debate. That's up for debate, right? Do I own any bonds? I personally don't. I don't like buying bonds. I don't like buying corporate bonds. I don't. Um, but it's just one way to make money.
Um, what are some of the ways we can look to the future from things that happened in the past?
So, I mean, the best example that I can give is um, 2007, 2008. What are some of the things that went wrong? So we know that a lot of people, a lot of Black people lost their homes. One of the reasons why they lost their homes is because they bought mortgages that had balloon interest rates or variable interest rates. So a balloon interest rate, you start off really small, a very low interest rate, and then as time progresses, it balloons, it gets bigger. A variable interest rate may be tied to whatever the Fed is doing with interest rates. So most recently, interest rates in 2020 were the lowest they've been historically, right? It now they're high. They're at 7, 8%, moving up and down. If you have a variable a mortgage with a variable interest rate, let's say you bought your house in 2020 and you did it with a variable interest rate, that would have been good because okay, you're buying it at 3%. But now over time, here we are in 2024, interest rates are at 7%. So your mortgage would have gone up. So it's learning what are some of the mistakes that Black people did? Well, we learn from the mistakes of those who came before us. You buy a mortgage with a rate that is constant, that is the same, that is not a balloon mortgage. So don't buy sophisticated products from these people, because one thing that these people do, they're very predatory when they're dealing with Black people. They're always trying to buy us something sophisticated. This is what they call it. They're always selling us this stuff because A, they know that we're not going to do the research, and B, they know that we don't know, and we're oftentimes going to pretend that we know, and we don't. So that's one example. The second would be what I just said. Instead of us just, most people, they go to work and they have their 401k, right? Well, your 401k is in the stock market. Like the 401k isn't like this magical retirement thing that just like it doesn't work like a savings account. A 401k is tied to the markets. So you want to know what's happening with it. You should have somebody, maybe hire a financial advisor or talk to your company about having someone sit down to you and explain to you what's happening within your 401k. You want to actually go into your 401k and see, okay, maybe a portion of you have too much money invested in bonds. Maybe you want more of your money invested in ETFs. Maybe you want more of your money invested in mutual funds or index funds, right? So it's being hands-on with your finances and understanding that we're not just in this macrocosm and we're not being impacted. Everything is all connected. So one, doing research, not buying overly sophisticated debt products from these people, from companies. And two, if you have a 401k, follow what's happening with the markets. Do what I just said, download Yahoo Finance, download CNBC, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, like really be aware and educate yourself on what's happening in the world because it's all connected.
What was the company in Houston, Texas that just blew up overnight? Enron. Give us
So Enron. So I did my undergrad in accounting. When I first came into it, Enron was what they used to help us navigate what to expect in the accounting industry. So Enron, they did what could be classified as creative accounting. So it's pretty much you're inflating your numbers, lying about how much money you're making, lying about your expenses, lying about what you're lying to the IRS. They lied. I mean, they lied. They cook the books, as they say. And when you're cooking the books, what that does is, okay, you're able to attract investor money. You're able to attract private investment money from private equity and venture capital. And if you go public, which they eventually did, obviously you're able to cook the books and you can lie to the street, aka Wall Street. And when you're lying to Wall Street then lies to ordinary people like you and I. And we go and we buy these, you go and you buy the stock. And then come to find out that they were lying. But who was complicit in them lying? Well, the accounting firms. Arthur Andersen was one of them, right? Arthur Andersen knew that they were lying and they helped them lie. So on the one hand, you had Enron, which was lying, and then you had one of the, I think it was maybe the Big Five at the time, I'm not sure, but one of the top CPA companies in the world at that time, and they helped them lie, and people lost their 401ks because it was invested in the company, right? People lost, if you bought stock, you lost your money. Like once the company tanks, the stock is worthless. So that's why I say if you're especially if you're working for a publicly traded company, you want to know what they're doing. I'll give you a perfect example. I was working for a startup about a year and a half ago, and I can't give too many details because I actually ended up, but they had raised, when I came into the company, they had raised $80 million. And when I tell you that these people were spending money like it was going out of style, I actually went to management and told them they had somebody with a PhD from Stanford University who was, I guess you could say, like advising the CEO of the company. I told people around me, I said, this company is going to fail within the next few months. I said, look at the way they're spending money. Most people are just going to work and they're just going there for a paycheck. When I'm working for a company, I'm aware. I want to know, what are you guys doing with the money? It wasn't a publicly traded company, it was private, but I still wanted to know about the finances. They fell 3 months after I made that statement. Literally everyone, 500 people were laid off. 500 people. Now, if you're somehow, I was spared because I saw where things are going, right? I saw, okay, you guys are spending money recklessly. Okay, you're hiring faster than you're creating new products. You're hiring faster than you're bringing in new customers. Your customer acquisition strategy sucks. It just sucks. You guys aren't going to make it. So I was spared. So it's being aware, not just going to work. We can no longer afford to just be on a treadmill and just living like little peons inside of the matrix. We've got to really become alive and aware, because this thing is, whatever's happening in the world is speeding up, and everyone's going to be impacted by it across the globe.
So when you say we live in unprecedented times, what do you mean by that?
I've never seen so many issues converging at one time in this country. I've never seen a point where so many people across the world. So let's just keep it regional. We'll just talk about the U.S. First off, if you're 39, you've lived through more than one catastrophic event. So let's say, all right, let's start from 2000. Let's say I'm 1999. I think it was about 14 or 15, 1999. Let me say 9. I remember, I'm from projects in Brooklyn. I remember standing in the lobby of the projects talking about computers and the world coming to an end. I remember them playing Prince, Party Like It's 1999. We were all thinking that the computers are going to shut off, the world was going to come to an end, and everything was going to be reset. Not only did that happen, but we saw in my lifetime the first financial crisis on the stock market in the 2000s. You had companies failing like it was going out of style, right? That's what I saw in my 14, 15 years, right? 7 years later, I'm out of high school, I'm in the job market, the economy collapses. Obama has to come in because most of the companies are too big to fail, right? Fast forward, pretty quiet in between then we get to 2020. I remember being on the phone with a friend 3 weeks before the lockdown in New York. And he said to me, something's coming. He's like, something's coming. You're gonna want to get prepared. And he's kind of conspiracy theorist. So I was just like, okay, whatever. 3 weeks later, lockdown. So that's 1, 2, 3. All right, here we are, fast forward. Now that was, in my mind, those are 7-year gaps between each watershed event, each crises. We're only 4 years out of COVID. We've got mass illegal immigration. We have Texas in a standoff with the president and the federal government. Okay. We've got BRICS impending. I'm telling people to take the dollar, take your dollars. Now, I don't want to spread fear. Continue to live and shop and travel, do all of that, but become more aware of what you're doing with your dollars, because honestly, I don't know how much time the dollar has. Anything is possible. Like I said, BRICS just rolled out $2 billion. They just issued $2 billion in bond instruments, and they're not taking dollars in payments, and it's backed by gold. I don't know how much time, never in my lifetime, have I heard conversations about not only that, Saudi Arabia is thinking about joining BRICS. Saudi Arabia is the reason why we have the petrodollar. Petrodollar meaning we sell oil in dollars, which helps prop up the US economy across the globe, which helps prop up the US dollar, excuse me. They're talking about potentially joining BRICS. If that happens, this whole thing is over. This whole house of cards is going to fall. The four things alone, those four things alone, for those things to be happening where our government is in trouble and the dollar is in trouble, for those things to be converging at the same time, I'm going through the history books, and I'm online and I'm doing the research, and in my lifetime, definitely, but definitely before in previous times, I've never. Now, one could argue FDR, there were some things there when they took us off the gold reserve, and there might be something there. And again, I'm not a historian, so you probably could speak more on that. But to have so many different things converging here on our own land, on our homeland, and then across the globe, potentially impacting what's going to happen here with our money and our politics, and to the conversation being America may not be a world power, maybe even 10 years from now. I personally have never, I don't know of any conversations or events that look like this to me. So that's why I say it's unprecedented times.
What kind of opportunities should we have our eye out on?
I'm personally want to recommend people start and focusing on tangible assets. And the best tangible asset that I can think of is land. The other thing is too, which I want to get to at some point, is to talk about the Jobs Act, which was signed into legislation by Obama in 2012. So I'll just segue into that. So tangible assets, being land. The other thing is the Jobs Act. So what is the Jobs Act? Jobs Act jumpstarts our business. And what that did was, so normally if you are not what's called an accredited investor, you can't invest in companies. Now, what do we know? What is the biggest problems that Black businesses have?
They're not supported.
They're not supported, yes. They're not supported, and they have issues with access to capital. Access to capital, meaning they can't get loans from banks. They generally are not able to do, so most companies, when they start, they're able to do what's called a friends and family round. Friends and family round means that I go to my friends and my family and I say, hey, I've got this great business idea or venture, and I've got proof of concept. I've already made sales. I've got people interested in it. I just need $50,000 to get to the next stage in the venture. Most Black people aren't able to do that. Most times you're being denied by the bank for a loan, right? So, and then if you're talking about venture capital, which is where a lot of companies get access to private capital, most venture capital funds aren't investing in Black businesses, right? So we have this thing that comes across called Jobs Act. Now, before a company becomes public, they're invested in by what's called accredited investors or angel investors, and then like private equity or venture capital. Most of the times, or legally, in order for you to be an accredited investor, there's certain criteria that you have to meet. Well, when Jobs Act came about, what it did was remove that barrier or that entry that barrier to entry for people like ordinary people like you and I to be able to invest in companies. So you have platforms that allow you to do what's called equity crowdfunding. That means that, let's say, I've got this lotion here and it's selling great, and now I want to raise money. I can now go onto a platform that is licensed to sell, to be a crowd equity fund, and I can go on there and we can buy shares within that company, right? And the Black company can utilize that capital to grow and scale. Well, and then there's other that you have. You can also create a fund, which are tier 1, tier 2 funds, all that. I'm not going to get into all that. But these are some of the things that are available to us that we're not taking advantage of. So what I want to encourage people to do, all I have to say is Jobs Act, and that alone will open up a myriad of opportunities within one's mind to think about all the different ways that they can raise capital and all the different ways that we can pool our resources together to create a fund to invest in our businesses, because no one's going to invest in us. Before a company can even be supported, it needs capital to make its product. That's the first step before you even get supported. If you have enough capital, access to capital, you can create marketing efforts that drive support. But most time we're not even able to do that. So the first thing is investing in tangible assets. Look up what intangible assets are out there, tangible assets. And 2, do research on the Jobs Act. And more Black businesses are going to need to, I'm encouraging more Black businesses to take advantage of the provisions that were laid out because of the Jobs Act. And one of them being equity crowdfunding. Look up Jobs Act and equity crowdfunding. Don't go on GoFundMe. I see a lot of, and I won't name any names, but I see there's this one person in particular, she's got the cure for cancer, Black woman, PhD. And she was saying how she's having an issue raising capital. And so she's, driving people to her page for donation. But I reached out to her and I said, listen, you have equity crowdfunding at your disposal. Utilize that. We weren't able to do that prior to 2012 to raise money amongst the public. That was not available to the average person. It was not. That is now available to you. Utilize it.
So you were talking about BRICS earlier. What are some of the differences in the BRIC financial services, or how they run their finances as opposed to here?
I don't have enough information on it, but at first glance, it would be that they're backed by something that we can actually see, which is gold, something that's actually tangible. As you can see, the petrodollar is largely backed by Saudi Arabia, right? That's possible because of Saudi Arabia. Now, once they leave or decide they no longer want to sell oil in US dollars, what's backing the US dollar? Money is how I think of money is a lot about the US dollar. How I think about the US dollar, a lot of it is agreement. Globally, people came together, and how I personally look at it, and said the US dollar is powerful. And yes, we have Forex and all that other jazz and all that, but at the most basic level, globally, people came together and said, there's consensus that the US dollar is powerful. So in my mind, the difference between the US dollar and BRICS, outside of it being backed by gold, is consensus. Once that global consensus leaves, then what is backing the US dollar? Like, what happens after that? That's how I look at it.
It's going to get ugly. Just a message to the chat. If you have some questions for Kenyatta, you can join in, come on and, ask her some questions, because I just have her on because I know these are some things that are important to the community. And she knows way more about this than I do. So if you have any questions you want to ask her or get some ideas from her, please join us. When we were talking earlier, you were saying whites are aging faster than they're reproducing. What does that mean? I mean, for the whole shebang.
Well, before I give you the stats, I'll give you what I see with my own eyeballs. So I uh, obviously the industry that I'm in, I'm around a lot of white people, and what I noticed is that they marry but don't have any kids. In fact, I met a couple who got a vasectomy, and then she got the husband got the vasectomy, and then she got her tubes tied. So they're committed to not having kids. Why? I don't know. I get different reasons from each of them, but I've worked with a lot of married white couples that don't have kids. You hear Elon Musk talking about it. You hear there's articles being written about it, and this is not just this is not just a white issue. This is happening in the problem for Asia too. So you have China who had the one child policy. Now they're actually paying people. They want to create a policy where they're paying couples, they're subsidizing families to have kids. So this is not just a white issue. This is happening across the globe. But speaking specifically for them, so they're not having kids for whatever reason. And from what I see, I sent you a video. There were a lot of elderly white people in there, not a lot of very young white people. Well, that's going to change the political tide. You guys are aging and you're not having kids. So you have an aging population and a childless population. The math isn't mathing. That's not good. So one, that's going to impact impact the political climate. So when people talk about migrants coming into this country so they can get votes, that might be true. That might very well be true, because from what I've experienced, the people that I know, they're either not having any kids or they're only having one child. And then we're seeing countless articles coming up talking about how there is a crisis within their community. In fact, Joe Biden even at some point said that they would want to partner with the Hispanics in one of his speeches. So that's what I saw. So I'm the statistics aside, from what I'm seeing, living in a predominantly white state, I see a lot of elderly white people out, and I also see a lot of childless couples.
You were saying earlier that Generation Z owns the future. First of all, from the civil rights all stars to now, can you go through the generations? Because I don't, I don't know who's who.
So you are Gen X. Your parents are baby boomers. So baby boomers, and I don't know who came before that. I guess it would be the people who ever lived through the Great Depression. So, but well, we're not sure they're here, so they probably don't count. So baby boomers, you're Gen X. I'm millennial or Gen Y. I was born in '84, so millennials start from '84, and then Gen Z is 1995 and onward. And then my daughter's generation, 2000, where there's like a one in front of it, they're called Generation Alpha.
Okay.
So what do I mean by Gen Z owns the future?
Yes.
Okay, so a few nights ago, I went to town hall, and it was town hall with the congressional um, congressmen for my district. And here's what I observed with my own eyeballs, because I'm not always looking for a book or an article or a statistic to affirm me. A lot of times, I'm just seeing things with my own eyeballs. So here's what I see personally. Um, the room was filled with a lot of apathetic white people who are out of touch. There are so many things happening in this country, in the world, that people are passionate about, that matter. I won't go into specifics about wars, but we know that there's a war going on that people don't like. People are upset about it, right? It doesn't matter which side you're on. The point is, people are upset about it, irrespective of whatever side you're on, right? There's that. People are upset about migrants, right? People are upset about student loans not being eliminated the way that they were promised to during the initial election. We're upset about that. We're upset about so many things, right? But you know who's the loudest about it? Gen Z. Even my generation, we're sitting inside, quiet, docile. Gen X, quiet. Baby boomers, quiet. What do we know about life? The loudest person gets the cheese, gets the award. If you're not going to say anything, what do the elders always say? Closed mouths don't get fed.
Right.
The only people saying anything about the effery that's taking place, and there's a lot of effery, is Gen Z. So I'm like, in my mind, they're claiming the future. They're claiming their future, while the rest of us are just sitting aside, acquiescing.
So, is this what you mean by the beginning of the end for the political sphere?
Yes. We have, this country has been very, very geared toward benefiting white people. But now they're bringing in lots of brown people. I don't care whether they vote blue or red. Those are not the things that matter in my mind. In my mind, if you're bringing in people that are brown, which are separate and apart from black people, and I don't do the whole black or brown coalition, just so you're aware. No, respectfully to the brown community or whatever you guys call yourselves. But I think that they will, how do I want to put this? I don't know if the policies and legislation that we've seen in the past will be as pro-white. I don't think it'll be so much around color. Now, again, I'm leaving us out of it because there's something different going on with us. We're out of it. I'm just thinking about whites and browns. I think that browns will shape this country in a way that's been different than how whites have done it. And we know, in my mind, personally, people's proclivities, their beliefs, their family values drive politics at the end of the day. So whites have a lot of hate in their heart. They have, and I can say this. I mean, I have white people helping me. I hang out with them. I can say this unapologetically. Like, they just have a different spirit about them. And I just think that's
everybody knows that.
in a spirit of being PC, I guess they just
Right.
have a different spirit about them, and
they know it.
Yeah, they have a very different spirit than the rest of the world, and they're a minority. So couple that with the fact, let's just go through the list: aging, not reproducing at a rate that their reproduction rate is below 1. Okay. The country's being flooded by brown people who possess an entirely different spirit than they do. This inevitably is going to influence the political landscape. Now, how, I don't know. I'm prescient in some ways and clueless in others. So I don't think any of us can predict the nuances and how it's going to shift, but it is going to shift. And I'm hoping that one of the shifts is that is not as violent towards Black people as it has historically been since the inception of the Confederation in 1781. That is my hope and prayer.
Well, if you have all these new people coming in and the so-called Blacks and African American are claiming that they're immigrants too, what do you think the outcome of that is going to be? Because it's in a lot of those people's mind that we're not from here, and we make sure that's the case. We double down on that. So what do you think is going to happen?
Well,
Because like you say, all these people are coming in, they're connected. They have a common goal. And it's kind of like you were saying earlier, we need to come together as families and stuff, which should have been the case, that during that great migration thing. See, these people are migrating in, but they still have a common goal. We migrated all across the country and forgot everybody else. We just started looking for ourselves.
mm,
So how do you think that's gonna impact?
I'm going to answer your question by retorting it with a statement. Uh, I believe so. I wanted to show this to you. I really wanted to show you. I have my ancestry board over there, and the person who did my genealogy was able to go back to 1813. I'm looking for someone who can go back even further than that. On it is very detailed. It shows my ancestors on my family owning land, planting Indian crops, what have you, right? I got that in 2018. A friend did it for me. 2018. Even with all of that information, I was still thinking that we came from Africa. I was still thinking that my ancestors were enslaved, even though I have information there that says otherwise. Only up until May did it finally click for me, right? Then when it clicked for me, it clicked for my friend. Then it clicked for another friend. Where am I going with this? We're waking up. So I don't think you should judge us based on what we're thinking now. I'm personally looking at how many of us are becoming aware of this truth. So the job now for me is to wake up as many people as possible and to share this truth. So I'll give you this. I believe that in many ways our life, well, let me speak for myself. I remember why I came to this planet. Like I have the memories of being elsewhere and then coming here, right? Um, I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness.
Amen.
What do you do as a Jehovah's Witness? So the gospel of Jehovah's Witness is to knock on people's doors and spread the truth. So you go knocking on people's door, hoping your friend doesn't answer, hoping that, your friend doesn't live there. And the whole idea is to spread the truth. Now, my grandmother transitioned in 2008. When she transitioned, I renounced Christianity. I was like, finally, I'm free. But but when I think about it, I said, wait a minute. It was predestined that I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness so that I could do what? Spread the truth. So that is my goal right now. I'm not looking at the people that are clinging to they are African American.
Right.
I'm focused on waking up as many of us to the truth as possible.
There you go. You said as the white population die out, it's going to create opportunities for African Americans, indigenous people in America. What do you mean by that?
So you're referring to when I was talking about, so at one point historically, there was a black man who actually founded Colorado. At one point, Denver was a largely black city. You go there now, seeing a black person is an event, literally. Um, Something happened. The people I talk to people who live here, they have no idea what happened. We both know what happened. It was gentrification, right? Amongst other things, right? That's the first thing. Second thing is there's a black family out here. The story went viral. They bought land in I'm forgetting the county, but it's about an hour out from here. And they were being harassed by white and Hispanic neighbors, white and brown neighbors, to those of you clinging to your black and brown coalition. Um, the story made headlines. It made headlines. And they were being threatened. Their animals were killed. Their cattle was killed. Their livestock was killed. Um, They were threatened with weaponry. The cops threatened them. That's a really scary thing, right? When Black people are experiencing things like that, it makes them reluctant to live in certain areas. Like when I tell people I live in Colorado, they're like, "Why would you want to be here?" And I'm like, because I'm pressing. I'm seeing that their population is dying out. As as their numbers decline, it makes it safer for us to move, to spread out and not have to be confined to the same historically. Now, there's a gentleman who wrote a book called you may know this book. He writes about the power of Black people who live in clusters to influence the political landscape. And I talk about this book all the time. But there's some power in that, and so I could see why Black people would want to stay in the historically Black states. But there is millions of acreage in this country, opportunities for us to develop and create our own towns. From my mind, how I see it, as their numbers die out, that creates an opportunity for us to do that in peace.
Last question. You were saying whites have made it historically dangerous to spread out, and this is created a legacy of weaker whites. So going forward, how should we look at that or capitalize on it? How should we look at that?
By weaker, I would say less inclined to resort to violence. So they've created this culture of we're all one, let's come together. Um, and one thing I was also wanted to drive, this is the point where was going with that. Everything that they do always has unintended consequences. Everything. So they created privilege for themselves, right? Based on skin color. Well, what did that make them? It made them very mediocre. I've worked with them. Mediocrity is the order of the day. Um, it's made them very, I don't want to say lazy, but it's made them underestimate us in many ways. It's made things too easy in a way that if challenges and conflict come, they oftentimes have difficulty facing it or rising to the occasion. Now, consequentially, because everything that they do always has consequences, negative consequences for them, negative for us, but I also see the positive. What do I mean by that? Well, let's use corporate. So they've raised the bar for us really, really high. We reach it, they move it. I'll speak for myself. When I go into the I'm not in there now, but when I go into the corporate world, I'm sharp. I'm professional. I speak eloquently. I'm intelligent because I never stopped learning simply because I left school. Uh, I'm intimidating for them, right? Because they have raised the bar so high for me while they were down here doing nothing, right? They've done that for a lot of Black women. They've taken our men, put them in jail, taken our sons, our uncles, our cousins, fathers, grandfathers, and put them in jail. And they've made Black women effing formidable, imperturbable. That's an unintended consequence. You've made us a force to be reckoned with. Did you mean to do that? Probably not. Unintended consequence.
Right.
Um, what do challenges and hardship do for you in life? They make you stronger. They make you sharp. If you're living a life of ease, when challenges finally do come, and they are coming, they are here,
Crumble.
you're going to crumble. You won't be able to navigate it. So that's what I'm saying. They thought that they were hurting us all this time, and all they were doing was preparing us for a time such as this.
Wow. So, Kenyatta, your last words you want to leave to the chat.
My parting words, let's see. It's our time now. Now we rise. As Rashad Jamal says all the time, now we rise. So everything that's happening, I'm not perturbed, or I'm not intimidated by all these migrants coming. It's still our land. I know that the ancestors are back. I know that mother is back, and I want us to know that, to rest in that, to stand firmly in that, and to know that we were never neglected. We were just being chiseled. And so now we rise. No matter what happens, even if it gets tough, now we rise.
Well, Miss Kenyatta Rose, thank you very much for coming to my platform and sharing that information.
Thank you for having me.
I'm sure everybody got a kick out of that. I sure did.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Indigenous Acamac says, fire. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you.
All right, and we'll
Thanks to
check
your
you
audience.
guys out a little later, okay?